Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacey Storino. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Mama Saga, and this is a channel where I am a mother and a lawyer by day, but I'm a Marvel fan since 1986 by night. So I love Marvel. I love the MCU, of course. I love the comics. I've collected quite a few. And I also love the Disney Plus series, especially when it comes to Marvel miniseries like, Miss Marvel, who I've been a fan of for quite a while. So, spoiler alert, this is going to be spoiler central if you're watching this live or on the replay. I might try to remember if people are joining, coming, and going during the live stream. I might remember to mention this is a spoilery review. In fact, let me just type it right down here. This is a spoiler filled review, just in case. Be forewarned. Okay, so just want to cover my base with that. And I also pinned both live and on the replay. I pinned a playlist where I have all my Miss Marvel videos. I have another channel where I do coach course creator stuff, the Stacey Storino channel, Stacey Storino, Storino. So I have like 1,600 subs over there. So this is not my first YouTube channel. This is not my first rodeo. And my video editor, Barney, and I are really excited about this channel. It's fun. So I definitely will have multiple videos uploaded a week that are edited. And then I'll probably have one or two lives go on to this channel. And if you are super knowledgeable about comics, whether it's about Miss Marvel or not, this is a great place for you to go, because we're going to be looking at, of course, everything from Easter eggs to theories. I'm going to compare and contrast like the comic book saga or run of Miss Marvel with the so far the Disney Plus / MCU version of Miss Marvel. So I do have quite a few videos in that playlist already, and this live stream, the replay will go in there too. So make sure you subscribe if you're really loving up on Marvel and you love to talk all things Marvel, be it comic book, MCU, or both. You're in the right place. Make sure you join my current subscribers, and you're more than fair to share any of your reactions really anywhere on the videos, but especially on this one. And if you think there's something I missed, please let me know in the comments section down below, either live or on the replay, so that this way we can talk it out in the comments. I'm sure I didn't catch everything. So again, this is a spoiler-filled review, okay? Just want to let you know that. So this episode starts off with the title, Crushed. And now that I've gotten to the other end of it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense on so many levels. Of course, we introduce Cameron here. He was from the comic book run. He is, in all of his hot glory here. And of course, Kamala crushes on Cameron from the first moment that she sees him. But that's not the only way the title Crushed plays out in this episode, episode 2. Because Kamala, well, Bruno is crushed because he picks up pretty quickly. His feelings are crushed. They're hurt because he picks up pretty quickly that Kamala is crushing on Cameron. And, you can tell from the expression on his face several times and things that Bruno does whenever Cameron's around, that he's not loving Cameron being there. He's kind of crushed and upset. His feelings are hurt. So crushed can play out for Bruno as well as for Kamala. But when you get to the end, we're just going to jump towards the end of episode 2, where Kamala goes to rescue another person, this time a young boy who's like hanging out of like a tower, and he's taking pictures of himself. He's taking selfies and putting like glasses on himself like he's gangster and everything. Yeah, he's so gangster, he ends up falling out and he grabs a hold on to something and he screams. Kamala's in the vicinity. She hears him and she changes into her, Captain Marvel cosplay outfit really quickly. And then she goes to save him. She's initially successful when she saves him, but she ends up feeling crushed because her emotions are crushed. She's sad and let down because, yes, she ends up saving the kid successfully, but initially she thinks she's got him saved under her hard light projection that she casts out, and it catches him. But when she turns around, basically she's all basking in the glory. She sticks this superhero landing, much like what she did in her fantasy world in episode 1. So it's a nice callback to episode 1 that way. But it turns out that the hard light projection evaporates and the kid falls, and she keeps tossing more hard light projection like discs to keep catching him. They keep evaporating out from under him. But she's smart. She keeps casting more projections so that as he gets closer and closer to the ground, if he does hit the ground, it's not going to hurt him as bad. But he does hit the ground. She doesn't catch him all the way down, and he starts crying and complaining about his ankle. So she goes from having stuck the perfect superhero landing, just like she did in her fantasy. It's like all what she thought it would be. Everybody's doing all these social media posts about this wonderful rescue, and you can see that she's like imagining it. It's probably going on in real life too, because with our devices, everything's all in real time now, right? However, she's disappointed because, yes, she saves the kid, but her beautiful superhero saved the moment like she did with Zoe Zimmer in episode 1. That kind of evaporates like the hard light projection discs, and she ends up feeling crushed. You can see it on her face. Her face falls and she runs off crying. So that's at least 3 different ways that I can bring crushed into it. I'll jump back towards the beginning, but arguably there's another way somebody gets crushed in episode 2, and it's kind of like Muneeba, because she keeps begging for her daughter to like drop the concept of Nani and the bracelet and just let it go. She tells her that specifically in episode 2. You do well to forget all of this, Kamala. And she just keeps feeling crushed because Kamala's not giving up on it. She's like a dog with a bone. She just won't let it go. She won't give it up. Okay, so that's the title. And we start with the very first thing that we see is Kamala's cosplay uniform in frame, right? So it's like a perfect mix between her fantasy and her reality, and everything's at an intersection, and it's all coming true for her. She's very excited, right? So this is great. So she ends up, then the very next, all the Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel artwork starts showing up behind that. And it's like her reality is here. It's in the forefront, and her fantasies kind of drop in back in the background. So the next scene that we see is Kamala walking into school, like she did towards the end of episode 1. But this time, the very first piece of music that plays is lyrics, "Let Me Clear My Throat," which was like a big, party anthem from the 90s. And when one clears their throat, it's like they're getting attention and they're clearing out whatever might have been backing up on them, literally too. But figuratively, you're like, I'm here. Everybody pay attention now. Let me clear my throat on the mic. So, and it's kind of like that's what Kamala is doing, because she's showing up and she's in the hallway. Just let me have a quick little sip. She's in the hallway and lyrics, "Let Me Clear My Throat" is playing, and she's all confident. Her shoulders are thrown back. She's making great eye contact with everybody. She's exuding confidence, which is very different from her walking through the halls in episode 1. You can tell the whole Miss Marvel and the hard light projection and the bangle has really excited her, right? So she's feeling confident because she's more of the person she wanted to be. So that opening montage is done. She's walking in. The kid with the basketball from episode 1 is like, trying to dribble the basketball in front of her, get up all in her face. And she's like, nope, she out basketballs the basketball kid. And he's like, whoa. And she just keeps going, and it's like a win. So now she's even more confident. The coach from episode 1 comes up to her in the hallway again. He mispronounces her name, and this time, very positive. She's not making a big scene about it. She's not negative. She's not hurt. She's all like, no, 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 it's pronounced Kamala, and he's like, oh, okay. So he's not pissed off. Like, nothing bad happens. And she's like, ooh, she's like getting even more excited about being so confident. And she sees it's paying off, right? So, so next she's like, anybody who's being an idiot, whatever, she's all just like, whatever. And she's fist bumping them. And they're like, oh, nobody's like beating up on her because she dared to be all confident or not take their crap. So, this is really good. It's a big, big change from episode 1. And then, the kids that are blocking her at the locker from last time, they're there again. And she's like, excuse me, and just goes right in and they back right off because honestly, this is kind of like, here comes the mama part of it. My mama advice for you. Sometimes, the confidence that you project, that's what people see. And if you don't wait for permission, you're not, it's the saying is it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? So she's not like, oh, like, can I get in there, guys? And they're like, no, like in episode 1, just like, excuse me. And she just dives right in before they have a chance to think about anything. And what are they going to do? That's her locker. She has the right to be there. And she's in, she's out. She's like, very confident. And you know what? Like what you project out, how you feel from the inside looking out is what you project. And that's what other people see, right? So everybody's kind of seeing that she's projecting confidence and they're like, whoa, and kind of respecting that, which is super cool. And so that's what I say to you guys watching this live or on the replay. You want to project more confidence, shoulders back, open chest, good eye contact. Because humans are mammals and mammals are animals. We can all kind of like see the social cues consciously and or subconsciously and read them, right? And so when you're projecting confidence, that's what people are receiving. They don't see all the feelings that are in your head and your heart, right? So this is me, mother hen moment, telling you guys that. It is the mama saga. All right. So then she bumps into Bruno Corelli. And a kid nearby, while they're sitting there talking to each other, a kid nearby is talking about Zoe Zimmer having a party at her house. If you remember from episode 1, she's got like 100,000 followers in her like social platform. I'm going to guess it's Instagram from the way things have been playing out. They don't specifically mention that. But this particular episode, it seems like people are on Insta quite a bit and or make reference to Instagram and hashtags on Instagram. So I'm going to guess Zoe Zimmer has like 100,000 followers on social. And this becomes a point that the Department of Damage Control agent Cleary kind of brings up later to kind of butter her up. So like, as you may or may not know, like almost always there's like a Chekhov's gun, that's a phrase when it comes to like movies and screenplays and stuff. You don't introduce something and like open a loop and not close the loop. So I was wondering if they were ever going to close the loop on her having like 100,000 followers. I didn't know if in episode 1, when they introduced that concept, it was just to establish just how popular she is. Like she's so popular, she transcends popularity from just being like a high school junior to like out in the big bad world too, which that might have been just enough. But I had a feeling that was going to come back and circle back around and become important in episode 2. It definitely is. We'll get to that more in a minute. So Zoe's having a party. That's something that she and her boyfriend in the comic book saga, they throw a party, but it's not at her house. It's like down on the pier. And that is actually part of, in the comic book saga, Kamala's, her origin story, where she sits there and she actually, that's the first time she goes and rescues someone. It's Zoe Zimmer. Now that happened in episode 1, but that was at AvengerCon. It was not at the party. Zoe Zimmer falls in the water. Kamala shows up, looking like Carol Danvers. Because remember, in the comic book saga, there's the Terrigen Mist. There's a bomb that hits Jersey City, and you've got the Terrigen Mist. And that's what causes Kamala to go into a cocoon. And she comes out looking like the thing that she thinks about the most. which is Captain Marvel / Carol Danvers, and she doesn't look like herself. But in this situation, she actually in the Marvel in the Disney Plus series, no, Kamala is saving her at Avenger Con. She does not save her at a like private party or in the water or anything. But now you wonder, is this a callback to the comics where, you know, early on in Kamala's origin story, we're still pretty early on in there, you know, Zoe's throwing a party, but this time it's at her house. It's not at the dock. You know, it's saying, oh, they also mentioned that her social media following quadrupled ever since she had physical contact with a superhero, which is hilarious. But also, if you think about it, if this happened in real life, a lot of people would be searching up who the victim is. At least that person's identified. It's Zoe Zimmer. She talked about it on social. You can see her talking about it. It appears to be on Instagram. And so, of course, people are like, oh, that's who. So she would now be, if we follow what happened in episode 1, her following goes from 100,000 to like 400,000 people on Instagram. And again, Damage Control refers to this later on when they're interrogating her. So it's a Chekhov's gun. They open a loop, they have to close the loop. If you introduce a gun in a screenplay, it ends up getting used later on in the screenplay. And Agent Cleary kind of uses this against Zoe to try and butter her up and break down her walls and get information from her. Now, there's a poster behind Bruno and Kamala in this scene where it says, get your tickets for homecoming today. So that's another loop that they open. I'm going to guess they're going to close it at anywhere between episodes 3 and 6, because this is only a 6 episode miniseries. Then Kamala notes to Bruno that Zoe's getting all the attention. And Bruno's kind of like, well, you know, that's the point of you having a secret identity. Nobody knows who you are. It's a secret. So nobody's going to be able to come up to you and congratulate you or give you credit for anything. So then they come up upon Zoe in another part of the school. She's surrounded by kids. She's the center of attention, which both in the comic book Saga and in the miniseries, that's true to form. That has to do with where Zoe is currently in her archetype and her character arc. And she's the center of attention. She's telling everybody how this has changed her life. Nakia jokes to Kamala that Zoe's complaining about being saved by the budget Captain Marvel. So she doesn't know that Kamala is Miss Marvel. She doesn't know that she's a person who saved Zoe. She gets the opportunity to learn about it later on in the episode. We're going to get there in a minute, why I think it's important it went down the way it went down. Kamala's just like, thank you. But, you know, meanwhile, Nakia doesn't know. She's not ribbing Kamala, but then, you know, Kamala feels even worse because she's not the center of attention. And now she thought she was all great at Avenger Con, and now she's being knocked off by her best friend who she loves. And the best friend's like budget Captain Marvel. You know, wouldn't that be like real life? Like, doesn't that figure you'd go and do something you think it's terrific and everybody's kind of flicking you? You think it's awesome. So Zoe's like, she actually names Kamala. Well, she names the person who saved her at AvengerCon because she doesn't have a name yet. She names her Nightlight. And I guess she's talked about it in social media. You'll find out later on why I'm saying that, because people are referring to this savior as Kamala Khan. Oh, hey, what's going on? Saga bin Saw. Hello. Is Kamala Khan's crushed and enhanced? I'm gonna guess so. I mean, you might know from the comic book Saga, he's an Inhuman. Cameron, who is her big crush, you know, he's an Inhuman, right? I think he's still gonna be something. When we get to the end of episode 2, I'll explain why I think there's some sort of bridge. Are they bringing in the Inhumans? Are they not? He's definitely somebody, and so is his mother who shows up in like the final frame, and Kamala's like, what? Because she's like, oh, I've been waiting to meet you for a very long time. There's definitely something brewing. I know that they're not necessarily looking to bring in the whole Inhumans. Like the Inhumans show is kind of not completely canon, but of course we had Ensign Mount in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So he's there in another part of the multiverse We'll see what happens in Earth 616. I'm pretty sure they're going to be bringing in the Inhumans at some point more into what our version of Earth 616 is. So Zoe dubs her savior Nightlight, which is so embarrassing. Kamala's not digging that. You can see that on the expression of her face. So things are kind of going from bad to worse. This isn't how Kamala expected things were going to be if she ever were able to live out her fantasies, right? So then Zoe proclaims to everyone in the following that since she's been saved, she's going to use it as an excuse for a party to celebrate the fragility of life. And, Neki is like disgusted with her. Kamala's disgusted. She's like, we're not going to that party. But then Cameron comes in. He's all like super hot. Zoe knows of him. So she introduces him so that she establishes who he is for the audience. And she declares him to be a senior. Remember, the kids in Kamala's throng are all juniors. So he's a senior. That makes him even more hot and exclusive, right? And so she immediately invites Cameron to her party, and then Kamala like flips on the dime and says, "We're going to go to the party." And Nike is like, because she's finding him hot too. So as they flash through the Miss Marvel like montage, there is one frame where you have the Miss Marvel logo, and there's a blue text bubble that shows that there's a communication at 1:32 p.m. Kind of curious about that. I can't quite figure out what that Easter egg ties into now, but I'm going to research it. Remember, I just came off watching episode 2. These are fresh, raw reactions. So I'm going to do some research, and I may or may not have a separate video on my channel about it. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. I've also pinned in the notes, the comments down below, the link to the playlist for everything I've done so far for Miss Marvel. Bruno doesn't want to go to the party, but Kamala wants him to come, so he ends up doing it. Then they go off, and she shows him her powers again because he asked to see them. He asks how they feel, and she says it's like an idea come to life, which is really cool because like Kamala's always been steeped in superheroes, and it's just like she's always dreamed of it, and now it's coming true for her. So she shows him the hard light projection. She grows it over her fist, and it starts to enlarge. It kind of calls back to her embiggening powers in the comics, but then it enlarges to the point where she's not super strong, and it falls to the ground. And she jokes that she should have been trying harder in gym. She doesn't appear to have super strength, at least off the jump. But then, she ends up pulling back. The fist hits the ceiling. Stuff starts coming down. And very quickly, she saves Bruno super fast. She then agrees with him. She's got to work on her skills more. So now you have the whole training montage, right? She's forming different shapes with her powers, which is cool. She's not just doing the discs that she can walk on. She eventually like forms a slide and slides down it and stuff like that. They're training up on the roof of the Circle Q, where Bruno lives and works. But it does appear, and I said this earlier on, if you didn't see the beginning, make sure you circle back because everything kind of ties into the title for the episode Crushed. It appears that she's having problems with her hard light projections. They don't tend to stay, or if she steps on them for too long, they tend to disappear out from under her. They tend to disintegrate, so she's trying to like build up her powers and be able to keep them strong, right? This wasn't, by the way, what happened when she was at AvengerCon. She didn't have the bracelet on her in the training montage. Bruno ends up sussing out that maybe she needs to have the bangle on her. To make, because she can do her powers without, but it seems like she's not as strong, she's not as enhanced when she does have the bracelet on or the bangle. Bruno tells her specifically, it looks like when your powers are being used, they come more so from the bangle. The bangle unlocked the superhuman part of you. So Bruno's like the perfect stand-in for us, the audience, and he's kind of feeding us the information just in case it wasn't really clear what's going on, like how come her powers aren't so good. It's because she needs the bangle too as part of the equation. In the next scene, Kamala is actually wearing the bangle, and the hard light projection step stays solid, which kind of confirms Bruno's suspicion that she absolutely needs the bangle to really do the best job. But then it sticks to her and she casts it aside to get it off of her, and she ends up knocking Bruno out. So we know that these hard light projections, even when she throws them away, they can be used as a weapon. She didn't know that at the time, but it's telling us, and that's another like Chekhov's gun. That's a loop that's now open, and in a subsequent episode, that's going to come back and become important. And she asks Bruno if she's Asgardian or something, and he says, maybe. I'm going to tell you right now, in the first video that I put out on this channel 2 weeks ago now, I went through the article. What was it? Variety. Kevin Feige was interviewed, and he specifically came out and said she thinks she's Asgardian, but she's not. But he does acknowledge that they had to change up her origin story so it can match where everything was in the MCU now. That's why I don't know. I know some people have theorized that what's gone around her is a Terrigen mist. I'm not agreeing with that. I don't know right now that it is. I think it's more like Kree, and there's part of Kamala's Kree bloodline. We get into this further in this episode. This episode gives us a lot more information about her family. And it kind of starts to hint at why Muneeba doesn't want to have anything to do with the storyline or the bangle or anything, and wants Kamala to leave it alone. Okay, I think they give us actually quite a bit more information. But stay with me. So Kamala's definitely not an Asgardian. Kevin Feige even came out specifically and said no. So the first video that's on my channel, they changed Kamala Khan's powers. Kevin Feige explains why. You want to go watch that. That's in the playlist that's pinned to the show notes down below. So then Kamala's eyes during another montage, they change to that purplish color, and then they switch back to the normal eye color, her normal brown eye color. You can see that the bangles, the use of the bangles, they're kind of like, unlocking or enhancing stuff that's going on in her DNA, and it's kind of flashing in and out. You could also theorize it because she's around 16 years old. She's a junior, right? So junior. So she's like 16, 17 years old. No offense, folks, if you're younger watching this, you're still going to be having hormones going on for quite a while. 16, 17, even 18 years old. So, her body might be maturing simultaneous to her having this, again, I'm going to theorize Kree blood going on. And she's got some sort of cosmic like DNA background merged with human. And then the bangle accelerates this. So the eyes are flashing purple and brown. She's kind of like a mix between what's cosmic and what's Terran or Earth. She's still training. The hard light projections are still kind of disintegrating out from under her, but eventually they're remaining solid. The more she trains, the more confidence she gets in terms of using them. So she can now project both steps and slides, and they stay. She can slide down the slide. It doesn't disappear, all that. So Nakia and Kamala are running around outside their neighborhood in Jersey City. They go into their neighborhood mosque. They're removing their shoes, as is tradition. They're stowing them away in public cubby spaces. They're washing their hands, their faces, and their feet. It's kind of funny. It was really quick. Again, this is my first reactions just coming off of watching episode 2. But it seems like as she lifts up her pant leg rather, to wash her feet, there's a hard light projection that just kind of comes out and disappears Kamala. I don't think Nakia quite catches it. She certainly didn't ask her about it. And as we're coming to know Nakia more, she's a very leader type individual, and she's a very confident. It appears like she's been confident a long while, although she has a conversation with Kamala later on in the girls' room at the high school that kind of shows you she's had her struggles too. So they're in the mosque. They're, they have their hijabs on, their head coverings on. They're, they're kneeling, they're touching their heads to the floor. They're going through the religious practice, practice that Sheikh Abdullah is leading. They're behaving respectfully. Nakia and Kamala, all throughout this time. There's two girls behind them, though, that represent people who aren't as devout, that still go to church, temple, mosque, what have you. They're kind of there, but they're kind of not. They're not really into the religious experience, and they're taking selfies and giggling and coming up with hashtags. They're shut down by two aunties from the community who are like, shh, shh, shh. So if you're any sort of religious or spiritual person, you've seen it. The people who are trying to get with the program and stay with them, and the other folks who are just not. The lights are on and nobody's home. They're doing it because somebody's making them do it. Nakia mentions during this part of the ceremony to Kamala under her breath that the men's section of the mosque is pristine, well cared for. The tech is up to date and everything. The women's section isn't. The sound's kind of terrible. Sheikh Abdullah hears them talk, and he tells Nakia and Kamala not to talk during the service. It seems off the jump that he's very much like the Sheikh Abdullah version in the comic book Saga. Like, he's a spiritual leader, but you can tell from his tone of voice, he's not nasty, he's not imperious. It's just like, hey ladies, rein it in. Kamala automatically knee-jerk apologizes when maybe they just should have stayed quiet and been like, gone back to service. And she's explaining out loud that it's hard to concentrate when there's partitions and things that are blocking her off from the rest of the session. And you could see all the men turning around and being like, what? A woman's talking during the service. You shouldn't be doing that. But they don't say anything. Sheikh Abdullah does. And he explains to her very kindly, very cool, that those sections or partitions are there. They're meant to protect the women's modesty and their dignity. It's part of their, religious beliefs, right? And it's part of the culture that goes with it. But he's not nasty about it, which I love. You can't stand any sort of religious leader of any walk of faith, religious or spiritual, that's all imperious. They're up on their high horse. Nah, he's very approachable. He smiles, and he immediately reins it into or connects it to, you know what? Thank you, though, for reminding me about reminding everybody to protect their dignity, their modesty. And, it's great to do that. Just don't do it during the lecture. So he couldn't be any nicer. This definitely sets him up as her confidant. He's kind of like the mentor that many superheroes have on their Joseph Campbell-esque hero's journey. So I'm glad they kind of kept him very in step with the comic book version of Sheikh Abdullah, because he goofs and he's with the kids and he's with the times and he gets it. So he's kind of towing that line between being a respectful religious, elder and leader. He's leading the services. He's being looked up to by folks in the community. So he kind of needs to keep that so that the more traditional people are liking it. But he wants to stay approachable to the kids and anybody else who's kind of new and kind of junior in their faith and understanding. So I like that. He also then reminds everybody that nominations are open for mosque board elections. Kamala immediately tells Nakia that she should run. And Nakia immediately is like, no, are you crazy? Because she's young and female, right? This is something that the male elders would tend to be on. She even says to Kamala, do I look like a boy? But, then you can kind of see that the seed's been planted throughout the rest of the episode, and then Nakia goes and runs with it. So when they come back out of service, Nakia goes to the public cubby space. She finds that her shoes, which she mentions were Versace's, were stolen. And then she ends up saying to Kamala after that, that's the 22nd time that her shoes have been stolen. So you can kind of see that not everybody is as faithful when they go to these things. And that could happen in any church, temple, or mosque, and in any faith. You can also tell that very clearly that Nakia comes from a family with money, between the reference to Versace and the fact that they can keep coming up with replacement shoes, including Versace's. So Kamala dutifully runs, the next scene. Kamala's at the Khan family home. Her mother comes in from shopping. She's got a ton of shopping bags with her, a ton, which very clearly also telegraphs to me, the audience member, that the Khan family has money too. I mean, she had all sorts of bags before, and I know that her son Amir is getting married, but still, it seems like every time we turn around, the mother has like 22 bags, right? So you can tell from Kamala's body language as she goes down the stairs. She hustles to help her mother. Her voice is all very quiet and very subdued, that she's very sorry. Remember, at the end of episode 1, she gets busted by her mother for sneaking out of the house and going to AvengerCon. So, her mother also sounds very sad and subdued and says thank you when Kamala's helping her. So she's not being a jerk. Muneeba isn't I don't want to curse. She's not a hard person all the time. And then Muneeba says, Kamala, I know that you are growing up, but I need you to stay safe. That's all that matters. So it's interesting to me, because this could have a dual meaning to it. Kamala's mother is concerned about the safety of her daughter. Well, any good parent is concerned about the safety of their child, right? Daughter, son, however they identify, right? So, but you have to sit there and go, is she saying that for another reason too? Because go and watch my video on episode 1, because I have my reaction video for that. But definitely I go, and there's a separate video, why is Miss Marvel's mom so tough? Where I take like the kernels and the Easter eggs from episode 1 that I touch upon in my episode 1 review, and I go back and unpack the whole kind of tortured relationship that mothers and daughters have before you even bake into it any sort of phantasmagorical superhero stuff, right? So, those 2 videos are definitely worth exploring. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. We're definitely going to come out with videos and live streams at least 5 days a week collectively on this channel. So, but I find it interesting that the mother kind of stresses that her daughter's safety is like the most important thing. So it's like Muneeba may know way more than she's telling. Kamala's nanny, or perhaps somebody further up on the familial food chain, we'll get there in a minute, but Muneeba, by saying, I know you're growing up, but I need you to stay safe, that's all that matters, is telegraphing that she has a dual concern. General safety for her daughter, and there's something real big going on in the background that's connected to the bangle and the family secret, and she really wants her daughter to lay low and be chill, right? Muneeba definitely knows more than what she's saying. And further on in episode 2, we definitely unpack that 2 separate times. Okay, so at the party, we're now at Zoe Zimmer's party. A student tricks Kamala into drinking something that has alcohol in it, because she asked if it contained alcohol and they said no. So then she takes the drink, she drinks it, and she's like, because it's got vodka in it. Why did they do that? Well, number 1, to show that Kamala still isn't completely cool in the school, no matter how confident she is. But also, that's another Chekhov's gun. We're opening up a loop that's going to get closed any second now, and it's going to play out twice in this episode. So Kamala's not happy about having drank the alcohol. There's definitely alcohol at the party. It's a high school party, right? But then somebody is going to be jumping from way up high into Zoe Zimmer's pool, and people are like, no, don't. That's a bit too high. And Kamala turns to Bruno as people are begging this guy not to jump. We don't see who he is yet. And Kamala turns to Bruno because he does know about her powers. And she's like, should I do something? And he's like, nope. So the person jumps, they come out of the pool, and who is it? It's a gorgeous and shirtless Kamran. So he's steamy. The pool has steam coming up out of it now, where I don't think it necessarily did before. The pool's steamy, and so is he, right? So now you see the scene shot through Kamala's fantasy lens. There's a ton of steam behind him. You get all these like images and emojis and like 100, like for 100%, like 100% hot. And there's flames and stuff. And he looks at her, and, he's looking at her and really casting his focus and attention on her more than anybody else. You could see from her face, she's crushing hard. You can tell from the lens she shot everything through that she's crushing hard. So like I said at the beginning of the live stream / replay, Crushed plays out several different ways with several different characters. So she's obviously crushing on Cameron. So Bruno says to him, hey man, you belly flopped really hard back there. That's gotta hurt. But Cameron's like, nah, because he's like tough and gorgeous and seemingly perfect. Well, I told you there was going to be the Chekhov's gun with the vodka. Of course, the cops have been alerted that not only is there a party, but there might be alcohol. So, the kids are like, oh my God, there's alcohol here. Everybody run. It's the cops. So all the kids are running amok. It's like a crazy scene. Hold on just a second. Excuse me. I don't mean to drink all over everybody, but I've been talking for almost 40 minutes. Holy moly. So Cameron's like, hey, everybody, don't worry. I've got a car. Come with. So Kamala, Bruno, Nakia, and her, I guess, date comes in the car. And, in the car, like Cameron's kind of hitting on Kamala, or so I would think. And she's digging it, of course, because she's crushing on him. And he's offering to take her for a ride, just the two of them, so that she could practice driving her car later on if she wants. This is kind of like a comic book callback also, where in the comic book Saga, Cameron takes Kamala to school. He offers to take her to school, and her family's like conservative and they don't want her to go. I don't even think, if I recall properly, Bruno was digging on that, but she went anyway in the comic books with Cameron. And in the comic books, Cameron doesn't actually take her to school. He takes her someplace else to talk to her and reveal himself as an Inhuman. That does not happen here, but it's kind of interesting what it leads to by the end of the episode. Okay, so he's making an offer to her that he could take her driving and they can go off alone in the car, which is a little bit, he seems to be Pakistani, she's Pakistani. Obviously it seems anyway that he's not been raised as conservative as her. We see that, she's got some genuine concerns in a moment. So they're connecting through all sorts of conversation. They're sharing with one another a bunch of cultural references, including like Bollywood and like, famous stars and stuff like that, you might not recognize the names or whatever if you're not part of that, culture, part of that upbringing. And Bruno's sitting in the back, and you can tell that he's feeling kind of left out. You can tell from the expression on his face, Bruno's feelings are getting crushed, like I said, towards the top of the live stream / replay. So Bruno ends up injecting himself into the conversation, jumping between the two front seats to kind of, sit there and admit he's seen Bollywood stuff too, which kind of feels kind of sad because he clearly does not have as much experience with it as both Kamala and Cameron do. So he's clearly an outsider being like, hello, I'm kind of cool too in a Pakistani way. No, he's not. But Kamala looks at Bruno and she smiles serenely as she does so, kind of taking it in. And my take on that in this scene is that she's like, wow, two boys are kind of interested in me. Look at Bruno trying to stay relevant, she's enjoying this. So then they go off to the Circle Q to hang out. Cameron drops everybody off there and they're kind of hanging out for a minute outside the car. He gives Kamala his phone number. He says it was great meeting all of you guys. He names everybody else right, except when he gets to Bruno, he calls him Ryan, which of course pisses off Bruno more. And I think it was Nakia who saw that and was kind of flicking Bruno, saying, oh, Ryan's sad, because like Kamala and Bruno and Nakia have been best friends for a very long time. And don't tell me that like Nakia doesn't kind of sense that there could be some chemistry between those two, but now gorgeous Cameron is there, and so everyone's crushing on him. And in the meantime, Bruno's feeling crushed and feeling very left out. There's a heart that shows up behind Kamala in this scene where like the neon lights kind of shapeshift like it did a little bit in episode 1. And so there's this big heart behind Kamala as Cameron drives off and he's like, ooh, I'll talk to you later. And he's like, make sure you give me your phone number too. Like, she's like, ooh, this guy really likes me. So she goes into the Khan family home. There's this whole dance sequence where she's dancing to Be My Baby by Ronnie Spector. And she's just dancing. She dances her way upstairs. She throws herself on the bed in her bedroom, and the cover, the quilt design kind of changes and morphs to kind of show that Cameron's already texted her. He already wants to book a date together, a driving lesson date. And Kamala immediately is like, totally. So you see all that shapeshift on the comforter, just like it was shapeshifting on the walls and stuff when she and Bruno were talking in episode 1. But now it's her and Cameron, and Bruno's kind of getting shoved out. The bell rings. She's out of her trance while she's in world history class, kind of mooning over the fact that she and Cameron are going to hang out later. But then she starts to feel like something on her nose. So, she'd do what a lot of us would do. She like picks up her phone. She's, looking at herself, and she realized there's like a hard light projection on her nose, and it's starting to spread. So she runs off to the bathroom. Before she does, though, as she's gathering up her stuff to run off, it's interesting that Nakia complains that the world history class has spent 6 weeks covering everything in detail about ancient Greece. And meanwhile, apparently the teacher has only spent a whole of 6 minutes on ancient Persia. And she's kind of pissed about that. Kamala runs off to the girls' bathroom. She hides in a stall, freaking out because like the hard light projection is starting to spread over her nose. It could start overtaking her face. Nakia comes into the girls' room. She stands outside the stall. She's asked if her friend's okay. She offers a tampon to her girlfriend because she figures that's what she must be freaking out about, right? Because she's acting all ashamed and quiet and subdued. She actually makes a comment that tells us even more about Muneeba. She goes, I have pads too, just in case, because I know how Muneeba feels about tampons. So again, very, very conservative culture. They keep dropping little hints and little Easter eggs about just how strict things are. Kamala reaches up to take the tampon to kind of pretend, oh yeah, that's what it is, to throw Nakia off, the scent of what's going on. But then she notices her whole hand is covered in a hard light projection. So she's like, I can't do that either. Clearly Nakia doesn't know. Clearly she doesn't want her to know. Right now it's just her and Bruno's thing. So she says, nope, I'm good. Then Nakia says, you've been acting strange the last couple of days. You can tell me anything, right? I mean, they're best friends, so best friend's going to say this. The hard light then disappears from Kamala's body, her nose and her hand. And she comes out of the stall and she looks in the mirror for like a little bit. There's a beat where she's really taking herself in. This is a callback to episode 1, where, you have Gabe Wilson, the guidance counselor, telling Kamala that she needs to look at herself in a mirror and ask her, what she sees, what kind of person she wants to be. And Kamala's kind of stuck going, just looking at herself in the mirror. And you can see she's looking at her reflection and trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? Who am I? Am I this regular girl, or am I somebody with powers I might not be able to control? I've been having problems with that for a while now in episode 2. Then she clears her throat. Again, a callback to the first song where Let Me Clear My Throat by Lyric plays. She's trying to get some clarification on who she is. And she says to Nakia, things are just changing really fast. I feel like I can't keep up. And that's kind of actually a reference to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where Ferris Bueller breaks the fourth wall and he looks at the audience and he warns them, life moves really fast. You got to try to keep up. Kamala feels like she can't do it because her personal life is kind of getting really frenzied with her mother, with Amir's upcoming wedding, with Bruno, because now she's really getting it that Bruno likes her. And they're not just friends. And then this whole Cameron thing, and there's all this excitement. And will her family, who's so conservative that a tampon might not be okay, are they going to be accepting of, her powers should she choose to share that? And she knows that Nakia is like big into her faith, but yet not 100%. Like she's with the times. She still can't tell Nakia. So Nakia tells Kamala that, listen, things aren't so easy for me either. Okay, my whole life I've either been too white for some people or too ethnic for other people. And I'm really glad that they brought that out. I'm in a neighborhood where we have friends of every color. My son has friends of every color, race, religion, anything imaginable. And I've definitely heard people and or their kids who are now teens, so they talk a lot more, they share a lot more. And some of them feel like they're not white enough for this crowd. They're not religious enough for that crowd. There's a sense and a feeling of not being quite 100% for anybody. And it's kind of cool to be all these things, but you don't always necessarily fit in with every situation. And this kind of plays into where Kamala is too. She's got a whole lot going on, and she's not going to quite fit in as a superhero with everyday life. And Naki even acknowledges that for her situation, she feels like she's very uncomfortable at times, quote unquote, sucky in between. And I'm glad that they're acknowledging that and they're referencing that, right? So she says to Kamala, when she first started wearing a hijab herself, she was hoping to, quote, shut some people up. But then she realized that she doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. So that's kind of an important message to us, the audience, but it's also an important message more than she knows to Kamala, that she really doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. She can really be who she wants to be. She just has to understand who that is first, obviously. So then she tells Kamala that she's made the decision to run for the mosque board, even though she's young, even though she's female. And she thanks Kamala for having been the impetus for planting that seed for her to run. And they're proud of each other. And, as besties do, they say, I love you. And as besties do, they have a big hug. And then we get into the next scene where Gabe Wilson, the guidance counselor, is calling Bruno into his office. Now, if you remember in episode 1, there was that quick little Easter egg where Bruno had a screen open in his room and he was looking at the Caltech program, right? We weren't sure why, but now we know. He's apparently applied for it. And the guidance counselor, who is still a goofball, he's like, are you sitting down? And Bruno's already sitting down in front of him. So it's like, yeah, I am, Then he gets congratulated for being accepted into the early immersion program at Caltech. And Bruno makes a quick mention, it's all the way in California. You would think that Bruno was really excited about being accepted. He applied, okay? So that was established in episode 1. That was a Chekhov's gun. We close the loop here. He applied. But unfortunately, now he's all torn because he doesn't know if he wants it or not. So he's like, oh, it's really expensive. But Gabe Wilson tells him, oh no, like it's completely paid for. It's a full scholarship. It even includes meals. So technically there's no reason why, Bruno would want to decline it. And yet he asks if he could have more time to think about it. So now we have another Chekhov's gun situation. There's another open loop. We have 4 more episodes to see how this closes. Cameron's waiting there for Kamala when she comes out of school, and she basks in his hotness and everything. Bruno runs up to her and he says, hey, I didn't see you in class. And he suggests that they work on her powers more. And she's pushing Bruno off to the side. She's like, I got to go train. And he tells her, I've got something to tell you. And she's like, later. So he's probably going to discuss Caltech with her. And then she inclines her head to Cameron, who's sitting there on his car, the hot guy on the hot car. And you could tell by the look on Bruno's face, he's pissed. But immediately Kamala says to him if he's going to come and eat dinner with her family later. It's clear that this is something he's done a whole bunch, he's like, yeah, I will. But let's put a pin in that. So Kamala and Cameron go off driving, and Bruno drops his head low and he leaves. You can tell he's literally crushed, like I said before. So after the driving montage, they're getting a bite to eat. Kamala's got a menu. They're talking even more now in depth about like the cultural norms and Bollywood and stars that, again, folks in their culture would definitely recognize. You could tell they're enjoying having this conversation back and forth. It's refreshing that somebody else gets you. So you can see like the walls are dropping. They're vibing with each other more. It's clear they have a lot in common. Kamala automatically finds herself knee-jerk explaining what the Urdu word for mother is. And he's like, Kamala, I know what the word for mother means. It's something that you're very clearly, it's established that she's had to do this a bunch with Bruno and other people. And he's like, no, I get you. I'm right there with you. So again, you could tell by her facial expression, she's really happy. Somebody gets it. They're connected. Then he indicates that he's close with his mother. He's moved to the United States with her. They moved to Jersey City. And Kamala says, maybe someday you'll feel like Jersey City is your home. And then suddenly she's holding up a menu and she's hiding them from some folks outside. And it's Amir and her fiance. And she's like, oh my gosh. And, Cameron puts his hand on her wrist. I do think you can see from where he puts his hand on her wrist, she's wearing the bangle. You can see a little bit of it. And you wonder, like, is that done on purpose? You get to the last beat of the episode and it's like, yeah, maybe it was. Doesn't matter. Amir and his fiance come inside the eatery. The kids have been spotted. Kamala immediately bakes up the story on the spot, which becomes a callback to the comic book Saga. She explains that Cameron is actually their cousin. Did you know, Amir? And Cameron immediately rolls with it. He claims that he's on Uncle Chowdhury's side. And Amir's like, really? Because Uncle Chowdhury is from Pakistan. You've got a very strong British accent, which Cameron does. So he changes his accent fluently to something that sounds more Pakistani and just says, oh, I've been binging, a British show. And I was just, osmosis, and Amir's like, oh, I think I remember you. We called you Haram.Cameron. Now, here's the thing. Amir doesn't believe this for a second. And if you understand what the Urdu word for haram means, you know it. So he's kind of like, oh, I'll play along for now. But haram actually is the word, the Urdu word for forbidden. So, he knows they're putting a trick on him. So at the dinner table, remember, Bruno was invited. He typically sits kind of like with his back to the camera, to the audience. But that chair is empty. He's not there. He didn't come. It's the rest of Kamala's family. Now, Cameron isn't there, and his mother certainly isn't there. But in the comic book Saga, Cameron was there. He was introduced. He was from a friend of the family from Pakistan. So, but Cameron isn't there. Family's having dinner. They're joking around that Amir used to work at Hot Topic in the mall. And his fiance is like, oh my God, please tell me you have a goth phase, right? So you could tell she's kind of like with the times and modern. She's not so traditional that it's not funny to her that he might have had a goth phase. And he's denying it, but Yusuf, his father, throws him under the bus. And he's just like, I just wore a lot of black, right? And so Yusuf establishes he's the cool dad from Pakistan. He goes, that's why we moved to America. And he's noting to his wife, Muneeba, so our children can become anything that they wanted to. But Muneeba goes almost anything. And there's this very hard look in her eyes. And again, this is one of those double moments where Muneeba is like, saying almost anything. She doesn't want her kids to get into a bunch of trouble. She wants them to have good lives. But you can also kind of tell she's very pointed about it. She doesn't want that bangle in her daughter's life. She doesn't want her daughter to know too much about what goes up on the maternal side of the family. So then you get into this whole discussion that I'm going to research more and come back and unpack even more in a separate interview, a separate video rather, and that's going to be a pre-edited video. That's going to be talking about all of the different ways that the partition that happened, in Pakistan history, the partition kind of plays into Kamala's family life here, and it might be part of the storyline having to do with the secret. Because the fiance asks if Yusuf's family has been in Karachi for a long time, and he says, my family has been in Karachi for generations. It turns out Muneeba's family was the one that moved to where his family lived from Bangladesh. And this was before everything merged and it became Pakistan proper. So Muneeba makes a point that when the British left that area and ceded control of it, it was kind of a mess and that there was a civil war, right? So Amir adds that basically every family has their own version of the partition story. But I think this has more than one meaning to it. They spend an awful lot of time discussing the partition, and then they even cite back to it as episode 2 continues. So when Muneeba leaves the room, I think she's in the kitchen, the father continues with the story. He says to everybody, you could tell he likes being the center of attention. He likes being a touch naughty. He likes to push back on his wife. So he says there's a story about Muneeba's family. They had to get on the last train out of the city as civil war was and unrest was going on. And Muneeba's Muneeba's mother, Sina, she got separated from her father at the train station. There's no mention of her mother. They get into it later. The father tried to find her, but of course, everybody's trying to pile on to the last train and get out of Dodge before things get too ugly, right? So the father's injured. He's got a walking stick. It's mayhem anyway. He's not really strong. He really didn't think he'd be able to find her, but the Sina Nani managed to get to the train just before it pulled out of the station, and nobody knew how she could have pulled this off. Now the camera is now on Muneeba as this part of the story is being told. She's still alone in the kitchen. There's this dark, uncomfortable look on her face. And Yusuf explains that Sina told everybody later that she followed a trail of stars to her father. That's how she found him, even though she's young, she's small. It's like calamity. Kamala even mouthed some of the words to the story too, so it's really clear that she's heard it before. It's part of their family history. So what happened to Sina's mother? The question is asked. Yusuf says, we don't know. She disappeared that night, the night of the Civil War leading to the partition, like many others did. So they just presume she died in the chaos. I don't think that's true. So under the table, you can see that Kamala's got her hand and her arm under it. It's got the bangle on it, and it's lighting up. So she's trying to hide it from everybody. And then all of a sudden, the table rumbles, things get dark. I'm going to guess this is from Kamala's perspective because nobody mentions this later. There's a bright light that streams in from the window. It becomes blinding. There's a dark shape or form or silhouette that appears. And then everything goes black. When the lights come back on, we see the scene again. We're seeing it from Kamala's perspective. Everybody else is ringed around her. She's clearly fainted. She's on the floor. I'm going to guess the bangle looks normal because no one's mentioning it at this point. It's clear that she's fainted. Her mom's sprinkling water on her, asking if she's okay. Amir is suddenly concerned that she has the evil eye and starts praying over her, which is like ridiculous, right? The mother's scolding Kamala in the meantime. She's ignoring what her son's doing, and she's spraying water on her and scolds her simultaneously for either not having eaten enough and she fainted, or she ate too much and she fainted, which is a total frightened mom moment. They freak out, and it's like, I love you, come back to life, but I'm mad at you at the same time. So later on, Kamala's in her bedroom. She covers herself up with a sheet, and she calls her nanny, which I'm like so excited. She calls her Nani. And she says, Nani's just concerned. Did you get my gifts? Did they get there? And Kamala confirms that they did. And she asks about the bangle, which is, of course, what the audience wants. Give us the goods, right? So we get a little bit of it. The Nani says that bangle belonged to my mother, Asha. And she says, let's see. But Nani adds, I'm not going to talk about the bangle at all. Your mother will get upset. Well, clearly, we know that since episode 1. Yusuf's outside the door banging on it. He hears his daughter talking, and he's like, what's up? He's probably concerned because she fainted earlier. He goes to open the door, and automatically Kamala casts a hard light projection to shut it. He tries to get in, and she keeps the projection streaming. She has no problem using her powers in the heat of the moment, notice. She had problems when she was training before, and it wasn't in the heat of the moment. Yes, the bangle helped, but it didn't make her super, super perfect. But boom, she's right then and there able to hold her father back, who was struggling to get in the door. And she doesn't seem to break a sweat doing it either. So that kind of tells me that when she's like really got the adrenaline going, the bangle, her DNA, whatever else is going on in terms of like tech or cosmic energy, boom, it's a lock and she can do whatever it is she needs to do. She actually holds it shut, and she's begging her Nani to tell her about the bracelet, but Dad pushes his way in and the call's over. So then you have the next scene. Everyone's dressed up. Yusuf jokes about Muneeba's love for Bon Jovi to Amir. She adds, Muneeba says, if it wasn't for slippery when wet, your father and I may never have met. So the parents crack up. Amir thinks it's gross. In fact, he says that was gross. Everyone's laughing. It's a very lighthearted scene. And then Kamala just has to punctuate everything and go, hey, or push and say, can you tell me about my great grandmother? I want to know. Like, it's like right now, you pick right now, everyone's having a good time. But Kamala can't get it off her mind. So Muneeba says, and I think her words are very, very, very telling. She says, where did you hear that name? So Kamala says, from Nani. I was talking to her last night, and that kind of came up. So Muneeba says that name brought great shame on our entire family. She's real crisp when she says this. I had to move halfway around the world to forget it. So then she begs Kamala to let it go. Okay. She just does not want to talk about it anymore. Meanwhile, Amir is joking to his fiance, is it okay if they could have their first dance at their wedding as man and wife to the song Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. And she's all like, again, you can tell she's totally cool with the times. She's like, I don't care as long as we're not dancing to You Give Love a Bad Name. So Yusuf's like all delighted. This is totally a Gen X kiss up to the Gen X future in-laws moment. And she's rocking it like I would, right? And Yusuf's like, ooh, can we have music by Prince too? So now they're in a carnival, right? The entire mosque is there. Everybody's eating and gossiping. Bruno shows up. He's in traditional looking garb too. And he's asking, does he look all right? He really cares. He cares in general, and he cares about Kamala. Naki is up there. She's trying to get voted into the mosque board. And they do a quick little montage of all the different types of people that Nakia has to approach. You've got the mosque bros who are like, Islam, observers who also want to look cool and with the times, they're all sporty. You have the pious boys, the ones that are super, super religious and conservative. You've got the Sunday school teacher she has to approach and win over. You have the Insta clique, which is kind of like those girls that were giggling in the mosque. They're like all dressed up and they're in it, but like, I'm too cool for school and I'm taking all sorts of pictures. And that's where my head really is at. Then you have the converts, and you see some people who, might not be Pakistani, but are definitely, decked out. They're converting to Islam. Keep in mind, Islam is, one of the most fastest growing religions on earth right now. So, they're part of the community too, and that's acknowledged. And then you've got the mini harami girls, which are the troublemaker girls. And then there's the Illuminantes. I love that. And they even make reference to the fact that these women know everything, just like the Illuminati in the comics. And now, as we've seen, the Illuminati were first revealed to us in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So it's kind of a cool play on that. So, but the next scene that we're at, we cut away from the mosque carnival, the Mosque Community Carnival, to Zoe Zimmer. She's at the Department of Damage Control. She thinks she's being questioned about the party. Remember I said earlier in the live stream / replay, the kids were all freaked out because there was alcohol at the party and the police are here. She's in a room, a dark room, being interrogated by Agent Cleary and his sidekick there. She doesn't realize it's the Department of Damage Control. She thinks she's in trouble because the kids were partying at her house and that there was alcohol there. But nope. It's all about what happened to her at AvengerCon, which is cool until it's not. Cleary's such a snake. If you saw Spider-Man No Way Home and you saw that whole questioning montage, he's trying to break down people's barriers to get the information out of them. He can tell that Zoe's like really into herself and this young popular girl. So he's buttering her up. He's like, ooh, you're an influencer. I know you have like 6 figures worth of followers. We love you at the office. We follow you. And she's all buying into it because she's young and she's kind of dopey. Then he just immediately swoops in for the kill and says, and then the enhanced individual tried to kill you, right? And Zoe's like floored and she's like, she didn't try to kill me. She saved my life. But Agent Cleary is trying to turn things around, trying to twist her so she gets defensive. She tried to kill me. Well, I'll give you anything you want. But Zoe doesn't fall for it. She looks troubled, though. He's asking her a bunch of questions. The sidekick comes in. They're dogpiling on her. She does not like it. They're pressuring her, and she's looking downward and frowning. She has no information for them. And I really don't dig the next line, but I understand why they put it in there. You feel bad that this is true. Cleary says to the other agent, okay, we're going to do a tri-state sweep. That's not the bad part. We're going to search every church, temple, and mosque. And then he warns her to be respectful. Okay, that's okay. But then he goes, the FBI is already surveilling the mosques. We already know that. Ugh. So then Zoe's all looking concerned when she's hearing this. Like, who are these people? So then we're back at the carnival. We're getting to the end of the episode. It's nightfall. Kamala's talking to the aunties from the Illuminati crowd, and she raises the issue of her great-grandmother. Now, many people knew the great-grandmother, but they said, one lady says many people knew that woman, but they probably wished that they hadn't. And Kamala's like, why? And they said, you have a good mother, Kamala. You know, she does not deserve the shame that this woman brought to her family. And another auntie says, my father called her a snake. And Kamala's like, why? And I'm like, oh my God, is there something reptilian going on? Maybe. We don't know. We'll see. But she says, the woman clarifies and said she put a curse on everything she touched. And then another auntie says, I heard she had a secret affair and took off with someone. And yet another auntie said, I heard that she had many affairs and that she had a secret family. And then another person says, I heard she killed a man and it happened during the partition. So we're calling back to the partition again. I'm telling you that's going to unfold more during the miniseries. They're spending way too much time on it. So that's going to be very pivotal to maybe the familial origin story. But meanwhile, there's a kid hanging out in a high building. He's like leaning out an open window, taking selfies. He's using all this AR, augmented reality to put glasses on himself like he's some sort of gangster. Well, yeah, he's not really a gangster because he falls out the window. He grabs onto something. He's super high and he's screaming. So Bruno and Kamala are together right now. And Bruno looks at Kamala like, okay, now. And she goes running off. She comes out from another direction dressed in her cosplay outfit from Avenger Con. So that's kind of closing the loop from the outfit being the first thing that we see in frame for episode 2. Somebody sees her on a nearby rooftop in her garb and goes, yo, it's Nightlight, which was absolutely hysterical. Kamala's not pleased about the name, but I guess we'll fix that later. She's way up high too. So she's crossing over from one building to another to get to the kid. And she's talking to him to keep him calm, which is smart because the kid's hysterical. And it's going to make the rescue harder if she does it. But you can also tell from her tone of voice and how she's kind of wobbly keeping that conversation going, but she can do it, that she's scared too because she's way up high. They talk about like pizza ice cream and how it's the same thing. And then like people are talking about, they can hear them from the ground and they're like, pizza ice cream, and I'm like, that's going to be something too. So she ends up walking over to him between the buildings and then the hard light projections that she casts. And people are taking pictures of her doing it. Now, remember what I said before. It's like the trifecta. She may have the DNA, and again, that's probably Kree is going to be my guess. Because there's white skin Kree, there's dark skin Kree, and then there's a blue skin Kree. So if you know your Kree from the comic books, and even in the MCU now, we've seen this in several different movies, she's got the Kree blood, probably. It's something to do with her DNA. Bruno even said it before. And the Bengal, right? And now there's stress and there's pressure. So she's got the adrenaline going. The hard light projections hold up. She's able to cross over to him. People are taking pictures. Naki is like, she's going to fall. She's going to fall. And again, she doesn't know that this is Kamala. She's just worried from Nightlight. And Bruno, you can see the look of confidence on his face and belief. He knows better. And he says that she won't. This just shows you how much Bruno really does love her and believes in her. And it's so hard now that Cameron's in the picture. So Kamala catches the kid. She creates a bigger hard light projection that they both end up falling onto, and it holds, right? It holds. It's huge and it holds. She stuck the landing literally, figuratively, and then she goes and she jumps off, leaving him by himself. I don't know why. And she's on another rooftop and she sticks the landing like Black Widow did and her sister mocked her for in the Black Widow movie. So she does a superhero landing. And she sticks the landing literally and figuratively. She's all proud, and this is actually a good callback to when she did it in her fantasy in episode 1. So I just love how they're managing to weave everything together in the miniseries. So you can see by the look on her face, she feels all great, but then the adrenaline drops down and she's calmer. So now the hard light projection's starting to wobble, and then there's an image that comes out of like the light, the hard light. It's a woman. I can't tell who it is. It might be her great grandmother. I'm just guessing. She appears in the bright light and reaches out to Kamala, which of course breaks Kamala's focus. So now the hard light projection's totally gone. Now she makes the right call. She starts casting out hard light projections, but her focus is broken. The adrenaline dropped. And so the projections don't hold very long. We're going back to the problem she originally had. But she keeps casting new, fresh discs under. So the boy, it slows down the boy's fall until he finally does hit the ground, except now he's hurt and he's complaining about his ankle and crying. So Kamala didn't really land stick the landing after all, ultimately like she thought. The camera goes to her. She's feeling horrible. She runs off and hides in shame on another rooftop far away. And then you can see her running, putting more distance between herself and the scene. She shows up on a red search digital screen. It says target located. There's some airborne droids. They've tracked her down. And it becomes clear they're from the Department of Damage Control. Kamala keeps running away and she's crying. She's sniffing, she's wiping her face, and she's crying because she feels terrible. And then she manages to use her powers to hit one of the droids. She keeps running. And then you see like a whole bunch of Department of Damage Control cars come out. There's a ton of personnel. They all have these glowing guns, right? And it's all for her. She distances herself from them. She's using her hard light projections, and then she hits the ground. A car pulls up magically at that same time, and it's kind of like a limousine looking car, and the door opens and it's Cameron driving, and he tells her to get in. So she does. As he's pulling away, she pulls off the mask. He doesn't even seem surprised, by the way, that it's Kamala under there. She had the mask on the whole time until then. How does he know it's her? How did he know to be there when she needed to be there? And as they're speeding away, there's a woman in the back seat, and she goes forward and she says, "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you," to Kamala. And then Cameron makes a quick reference that she's his mother. And then boom, scene over. There's no cutscene this time. There's nothing like that. There's no post-credit scene. I watched it all the way through. So these are my first reactions and thoughts and notes. Make sure that you've subscribed to the Mama Saga. We have several pre-edited videos that come out every week that has to do with Marvel Comics, the MCU, Disney Plus, series. We will definitely have more deep dives into things like the partition and the musical references. Like everything has importance, but I want to research those things more. And then Barney, my video editor, will help me make some beautiful videos for you guys. So make sure you give this a like. If you think there's anything I missed or anything that I should consider, or there's a video you want me to make, you can always leave that in the comments of any of my videos. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.